Oh, I've been waiting for this. What's up, Tom? How you doing, buddy? Oh, I'm so excited. I'm hopped up on 10 milligrams of caffeine, Mean Gene. I can see sounds. I can see everything. Tom Holland, I got you for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of playtime. With that being said, you all want to know what I think? You all want to know what I think about Spider-Man Brand New Day? I'll tell you. I think that Spider-Man Brand New Day was actually pretty good. Not gonna lie. So, I bet I'm gonna be disappointing a lot of people here when I say this, that yes, Spider-Man Brand New Day was in fact good. I actually did think that it was good. So now that I've got my minute, 30-second little joking thing out of the way here, we can finally get on to the review of Spider-Man Brand New Day here. So what are my real thoughts on the movie? Well, like I said, I think that it was actually good. Not perfect. There are some things in this that could have been better, that could have, used a bit more work or stuff like that. But overall, I think that this was a pretty solid, finally a pretty solid standalone Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. And that is, honestly, big praise coming from me. You know how I am. People who know me, and I've been following this channel for a while, you know how I am when it comes to him being Spider-Man and playing the character and stuff. I'm very critical. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get on talking about like the cast. Starting with Spider-Man, Peter Parker, Tom Holland. He was much more mature, and a lot of his jokes came off more natural, which, again, way better, way big improvement compared to the first 2 movies. I think the director and the writers contribute a big part of that. We did get a new director and a new writers here. So that probably is why. And it shows. And it's funny because I remember there were all these people, and they were, a lot of these people recently, since the trailers for Spider-Man Brand New Day started coming out, a lot of people were sitting there saying things like, oh man, John Watts, what was he doing? He didn't know what he was doing. And I'm over here like 10 years ago, like gonna lose my shit, because I'm just like, where were you idiots when I was talking about all this shit? But again, going back to Tom, so he makes his own web shooters, he makes his own suit, he does all those things that I expect him to do. And again, that's good, but I already expected him to do those things before, but whatever. He also has this AI, this like little AI he made. Of course, he made an AI. Again, can't get away from Iron Boy Jr. over here. Needs a AI like Jarvis or Friday, so he got to make his own little AI companion that he talks to, which I think she kind of vanishes like halfway through the movie, if I'm not mistaken, more or less. So I don't know. It was weird, but yeah, there are still things about him. I still don't like about this version, but overall, this was his best movie. This was hands down his best movie that he's been part of. Even, honestly, like more than those Avengers movies that he was in. The action in those Avengers movies that he was in was always, again, a big reason why it was really cool seeing him. But no, I think that this is his best job yet as Spider-Man. So, moving on, let's talk about The Punisher, Frank Castle, which John Bernthal? He was in this movie actually a lot more than I thought he would be. I was kind of surprised by that. I thought he would kind of come in, he would kind of have maybe a few scenes, a few moments of dialogue, and then he would just kind of leave. I did not think, and that's one of the things that this movie does. They sometimes will this is what they'll do. They'll either bring in a character that I think will be there for a certain amount of time, and they will completely change like what I think they're gonna do with him, meaning like how long they're gonna be there. And with Punisher, I was surprised that he was here throughout the entire movie. I didn't think that he would be here the whole time the way he was. But it was cool. I did like seeing him that for that time period. So the thing about this Punisher is it's nice to see Frank and Peter interacting, but Frank seems a bit more toned down in this movie, and I think it's because it's a PG-13 movie. Yes, I've seen the clip and the jokes of him like trying to swear or whatever, and then he'll like web his mouth shut, or he'll do something to kind of like get Frank to be quiet or whatever. But I don't know. It was just he just felt toned down, like just a little bit. He kind of felt like he was toned down to around Spider-Man's level. And I'm not going to spoil it, but there was a scene where, again, he just kind of seemed a little out of character. And we probably will get to that in the spoiler section, but again, it was, overall, John Berthal's Punisher is not my favorite Punisher, but he definitely is, you know, not the worst in my eyes. So, again, it was nice seeing him. He's a decent portrayal of Frank Castle, I guess. Alright, now let's talk about Hulk, Bruce Banner. Mark Ruffalo! So, he was in this a lot less than I thought he would be. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying with Punisher, where they bring in characters who I think are not going to be there that long, but then they end up being there a lot longer. And they got characters like Bruce Banner / Hulk, which I thought was going to be there a lot longer, but then he ended up not being there as long as I thought he would be. And which kind of sucks a little bit, especially with, you know, what happens later in the movie, which I probably will talk about in the spoiler section, but he probably only gets a total of like probably 3 scenes, and then he's just kind of gone. Which, based off of, again, how I feel like his character was underutilized and underused. But maybe it's it's kind of like the whole Deadpool and Wolverine thing with Chris Evans, where it was like, oh man, you know how expensive he is, you know, type of joke. But it just doesn't feel right, given a little bit of like Peter's internal struggle with his powers being wonky. Trying not to say too much for the sake, I'm trying to base off of most of what I say from those trailers without giving too much away. But yeah, at the same time, I mean, it's fine, I guess. I mean, to be honest with you, I never even really liked Mark Ruffalo's version of Hulk ever since Avengers 1. I always preferred Edward Norton's Hulk. I always wish that they kept that version of him instead, especially given what happened with Endgame and Infinity War and all that stuff. But it is what it is. You know, you can't change the past, so it is. You know, it's what we got. So now I was very torn if I was going to talk about this actress, because at least in this section of the video, because number one, you don't hear this character's name in the trailers at all. You do not see this character even in the trailer. But they are a big part of the story, and everyone on the internet has been talking about this actress being in the movie, which is Sadie Sink. Now, the thing about Sadie Sink is, yes. So I'm not gonna save this for the spoiler section. I will just say this to get it out of the way, so that you guys are not like, you know, still wondering who she's playing as. She is in fact playing Jean Grey in the movie, and is kind of sort of the villain, but is also kind of sort of not the villain, if that makes sense. So I was kind of right, but I was also kind of not right. It was kind of the 50-50 type of thing with that. So, whatever. It's fine. It is weird because I did not believe it. For the longest time, I remember when we were having those trailers, and I remember people were saying, oh, Sadie Sink's gonna be Jean Grey. And I remember I was so in denial. I was so in denial about it, because I was just like, it doesn't make sense. You don't really see these characters interact in the comics too often, even though, yes, I put up those pictures as a joke. But my point is that you do not see these characters usually around each other, not often. So for them to just kind of like have her be almost the main antagonist is, again, a bit weird. You know, like, when I think about a Spider-Man story, I think about like when I think about like characters that would like join him in his story or whatever, I could see a Wolverine popping up to like be part of his story, one of his stories. But Jean Grey, that's not something that, you know, would even come to mind. That's not even the first character that would come to my mind when I think about team-ups or, like, characters that show up in Spider-Man stories. So, it was very odd seeing Jean Grey here. It was very strange. But, hey, it was something different, I guess. So, that's something. Alright, so with that being said, let's just talk about the elephant in the room, which is Michelle Jones, Zendaya. Unfortunately, she is in it a lot more than I thought she would be. She's still obnoxious. She's still annoying. With her attitude and still with the resting bitch face. I don't like her. I don't like her. I feel like she's one of those actresses, again, objectively, I feel like she's just one of those actresses that always kind of just plays herself, which can work with some movies, but I feel like it doesn't matter, I guess, because this character is just kind of made up anyway, but at the same time, it's just, I never liked her. I never liked her from the get-go. I always thought she was weird and frustrating and just strange, and not in a good way, you know, like, I just never liked this character, and I honestly never even really liked this actress. Never have, never will, and there's not much else, unfortunately, I can really say about this. Now, the movie does do one good thing with her. I won't say it until the spoiler section, but one good thing, and it probably is what you think. Maybe. I don't know. Let's move on to Ned. So, Jacob Batalon, the CEO, people on the internet like to call him, for some reason. Don't know why, don't care. Again, he's in it a lot more than I wanted. He is, again, he's portrayed in this movie as, like, this fan of Spider-Man, but also kind of like this stalker. So it was just, again, this weird, cringy friend relationship that just, dare I say, is kind of worse, but at least by the end it's not, but whatever, I'm not going to say anything more than that, but, again, I can't believe these two are in it as much as I thought they were. Again, it makes sense for this version of Spider-Man, but at the same time, it's frustrating. I want him to move on. I want him to find new friends, new people to connect with, because I'm getting real tired of these characters. So anyway, let's move on to Scorpion. Michael Mondo was in the movie a little bit more, just a little bit more than I thought he would be. I kind of wish he reoccurred a little bit more toward the end. I'll explain why in the spoiler section. But, again, it is good to see new Spider-Man villains on the big screen. I think that's good. So we'll see what the next big Spider-Man villain they put on the screen is. So, yeah, I mean, there's not much else I can really say about him. I mean, for what he wasn't not one of the main antagonists. He just kind of was, unfortunately, just kind of a jobber, is the best way I can describe it. He's just a jobber. Like, he kind of comes in, it's in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler. There's a scene where he's fighting Spider-Man, and he's possessed by Jean. That's it. That's really it. There's not much else for me to really say about him, unfortunately. Like, and that's disappointing. It's disappointing. I wanted more. Like, I actually did want more of this Scorpion. I wanted to see more. I wanted to see them go at it more. So, again, I'll get to it in the spoiler section, but again, I wanted to see him more toward the end, but that's not what happened, unfortunately. Alright, so probably the last character I'll talk about, because she is in this, Black Widow, the new Black Widow, or the Yelena Belova, what's her name? Belova? I think so. I probably butchered that name. Who's played by Florence Pugh, I think her name is. She was in this movie a little bit more than I thought she would be. I thought she would only be in for one scene. I did not know that she'd be in for about like 2 or 3. Which I thought was kind of strange, honestly, especially her office. But there's not much else I can really say about that without spoiling it. But she was actually pretty helpful. I actually kind of did like that Spider-Man he actually used her as like a way to get information about what was about some things in the city and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool. I actually liked the idea of him going to other heroes or groups of heroes and stuff like that to get like information and stuff. I think that was alright. That was pretty cool. But yeah, I can't really say much else about her. She was only, like I said, she only had about like 2 or 3 scenes. But yeah, no, I guess we'll see her in Avengers Doomsday, right? So, which I still have yet to talk about, I know. Alright, so with that being said, let's move on to the pros and the cons with the movie. So we'll start with the pros, and we'll do the cons. And I actually have a lot and an equal amount of pros and cons here. So this movie. So the thing about this movie, and the reason why like I think that this is much better than Homecoming or Far From Home, is because it had the heart of Spider-Man, which the other 2 movies did not. It felt like the best way I remember I said this in I think I said this in those reviews, but I was saying how it seemed more in those older movies, those first 2 movies, hell, even some of the Avengers movies, it was more of like him, like, just the suit, like it's just Spider-Man and like the suit, but like no Peter Parker, no soul in the suit, right? And that's this one thing that I think this movie does do right, which is actually it has the heart of Spider-Man. It has the heart of Spider-Man, but there are some things about it that are not perfect. It has the heart, but it doesn't have like more of like the brains. It does a little bit, but not enough. And it doesn't have, again, I would say, what's the way I can describe this? Certain organs that is kind of needed to make Spider-Man Spider-Man. That's like the best way I can describe that. But again, we're not trying to talk about cons yet. This movie balances moments of seriousness with the comedy a lot better. Again, I would even say just the older Spider-Man movies, like Homecoming and Far From Home. I would even say movies like those older MCU movies, like, how it got, where like they got very jokey every like 5 seconds, and a lot of people were getting sick of that. But this movie, I think, really did balance its humor with its more serious tones a lot better, again, than those other MCU / Spider-Man movies. And that's good. It did a really good job balancing those things. It's very good to see, hell, an MCU movie in general do that. So that's good. Most of the jokes actually did land for me. I would say that, I would still say, unfortunately, that the one in the trailer was still the best one, about him joking about how, like, he's like, I'm not in high school anymore, like stretching. But that scene was really cool because, again, it kind of goes back to how Spider-Man uses his humor to distract enemies and stuff like that, or let their guards down. So again, that movie understood that, and it did that a lot better, and that's good. Again, very good. Spider-Man, I think I said this in earlier, but he's more mature and he's confident. So, like, in those earlier movies, he wasn't confident. He was very timid, and he was very soft. Like, he just didn't have a backbone. And that was also another one of my biggest gripes with those earlier versions of him, is it's just like and I know what people would say, like, oh, well, you know, it takes time to develop that and all that stuff, but at the same time, I mean, it kind of took a little too long, in my opinion. I think it took way too long. If it should have been in Homecoming where he got the backbone, and you know, not now, you know. So yeah, no, a lot more mature, a lot more confident, a lot more leadership and taking charge. Which again, I can't really go into too much, but again, it really, you see that, and it's good. I like to see that. So I was talking about, so there's a lot of characters in this movie. You know, I remember when the trailers were coming out, we were all talking about how, is it going to be too many characters? Are they going to balance it correctly? Is it going to be a mess? Don't get me wrong, it's a little bit of a mess, but it's a more controlled mess, I would say. It does actually balance the multiple characters pretty well, I would say. I would say that it does balance them all pretty well. The action, again, is fantastic. I did say this in my my videos prior, but yeah, the action is fantastic. But it's as good as I expected. You know, like, you know, the action from those first two movies, it was like, what is going on here? You know, there's nothing going on. It's boring. It's nothing. But here, you know, there's a lot of actions. There's like this. I would say the action in this movie really carries the movie. There's a lot of action scenes in this movie, and it's good that the action's good. So yeah. So again, another pro I added, but I already talked about, which was Peter making his gadgets and making his suit, and you know, all his gear and equipment, and it was really cool. There were, again, I kind of wanted to see more of that, though. You know, I wanted to see more of, like, what, maybe he could get, like, different gadgets, different stuff. Kind of like the Insomniac games. A lot of this action did feel a little bit like the Insomniac games. Especially with him taking down cars, with him diving and swinging around. So it would have been kind of cool to see him, like, have other web gadgets. Like the web grenade, there was only like one reference to that. But again, because of the narrative, unfortunately, we don't really see that. So I'll get into that a little later, probably in the spoiler section. But again, we only get glimpses of it. We don't see it fully. But moving on, let's talk about the pacing. Now, the pacing, I actually have a pro and a con. The pacing is consistent. The pacing's actually consistent, which is good. But, again, I'll talk about the problem with the pacing a little bit later, but the pacing is consistent, which is a good thing, because sometimes, you know, you don't want certain scenes to go too fast or too slow, but again, I'll talk about that later. So the pacing's consistent, which is overall a good thing. And they finally, so the last pro that I wrote down is they finally made Peter more relatable. At least to me. Like, I think he was much more relatable in this movie than he ever was in those first, like, 2, hell, even 3 movies, and Avengers movies. So no, I'm very happy that I could finally kind of, you know, connect with this Spider-Man, finally. So that's good. Alright, let's move on to the cons. So let's get to the bad things. Let's get to the things that I did not like and that I got frustrated with and annoyed me. So let's get back to the pacing. So I was talking about earlier how the pacing is consistent. But there were moments in the story where I wish that it would have slowed down a little bit and explained certain scenes. Or certain things, excuse me. But yeah, scenes. There were scenes where it was like, man, I really wish you'd slow down and you'd show me that more. I really wish you'd show me more about, like, this or that, or what he's been doing for the last couple years and stuff. And you do see that, but it goes really fast. And I kind of wish it was a little bit slower in those scenes, so that you kind of get a little bit more of that. But But yeah, that's one of those moments. It was a couple moments like that where I was like, man, I wish like this scene would slow down a bit. This scene would slow down a bit. And I'm not saying there are not moments where it's slow. There are some moments where it's slow, but those moments I don't care about too much. Versus scenes where I do cared about and I wish they were a bit more fleshed out or longer or things like that. So, it's not really a spoiler because it's in the trailer, but Peter's, black eyes, like his mutation, it's not officially solved by the end of the movie. I know that kind of sounds like a spoiler, but it's not solved by the end of the movie. Like you could say, for people who have watched it, you could say that it was, but from what I saw and what I was seeing, it just doesn't seem like it was wrapped up really well. It just kind of was. The best way I can describe it is it reminded me of the scene in Homecoming where he just kind of like hypes himself up and then he just kind of gets through it. And that's not how that works. This is science. This is not like, adrenaline pumping bullshit, okay? I can't really elaborate too much without getting into spoilers, but again, they do not really solve this issue by the end of the movie. They do not solve a lot of things by the end of this movie. There are a lot of unanswered questions by the end of this movie, and I do not like that, and that's a problem. So that's where it got messy. That's where it got a little messy. The epilogue was not good. The epilogue was not good because of the fact that it was so messy. So going back to the pacing thing, cameos. Let's talk about cameos. So we got there were a lot of trailer shots that we saw. That's what they were. They were trailer shots because they were just that's what I meant by the pacing, where it's like, I want to see those scenes. I want to see, him going up against Tombstone. I want to see but it was only one scene. That's the problem. Those scenes were like one scene each. You might as well have just been a picture each. You might as well have been a fucking slideshow, because that's what it was. So again, this goes back to my issue where it's like, you got all these Spider-Man villains, but you don't fucking use the Spider-Man villains. Instead, you got Jean fucking Grey in here, and whoever the fuck else. And it's like, these are not Spider-Man villains. It's like, again, this movie kind of takes 2 steps forward, but it takes like 1.5 step back. Is the best way I can describe the movie. It's like, it does a lot right, but it does a few things that really make it trip up on itself a little bit. With its narrative, with its character choices, and what it decides to do. But yeah, no, the cameos, just panels. It might as well just be comic panels. They just set up a comic panel, and then they move on. That's it. Again, because they keep trying to, like, make you feel like it's, like, getting ripped off a comic book, which is fine if this was a more comic-accurate version of Spider-Man, which it's not. It's not. So, again, it just doesn't feel right. So, again, it's just like, whatever, cool, I guess. Cool that you got the trailer shots in there, Sony and Disney. It's whatever. Alright, so I had another con I wrote down, MJ and Ned, Michelle and Ned, but honestly, I don't feel like I need to elaborate on this anymore. You guys already kind of know how I feel about these characters, so I'm gonna just kind of move on. I did talk about this a little bit. Punisher, there was a scene where Punisher's, well, actually, there's a couple scenes, but more toward the end of the movie, Punisher, I feel like, kind of broke character a little bit, and he was a bit goofy. It was weird. And that's what I meant, when I was talking about him earlier. I was like, I feel like they kind of toned him down to make him more family-friendly. And it's like, no, you don't. And don't get me wrong, there were things he said that didn't make sense, but was trying to sound more like him, but it just didn't feel right. I'll talk more about it when we get to the spoiler section, but yeah, Punisher was a bit goofy, especially at the end. Again, I said this before, Hulk and Bruce Banner was not used as much as I wanted, or should have. I felt he was very underused. I said this before, a little bit earlier, I wished the Spider-Man villains were more part of the main story. I wished, like, Tombstone and, like, you know, because you see Tombstone in the trailer, and like, oh, is Tombstone going to be like one of the big bads he's up against? No, he's just kind of there for, like, a trailer shot. That's it. That is it. He's just there for a comic book panel trailer shot. That's it. And that's sad. Because that guy, I think, really wanted to play Tombstone, too. And he got his wish, kind of, sort of. But I kind of wish I got to see more. Again, I wanted to see more Spider-Man villains. I think is one of my biggest cons with this movie. And that's something I can at least give to Homecoming and Far From Home. At least they had Spider-Man villains, like Vulture and Mysterio. At least they had that. Where, what's the main villain of this movie? Maybe Jean, maybe not Jean. Again, me trying to, like, get around not telling you who the villain is right now. But it was not a Spider-Man villain, that's for sure. Lack of legacy characters. Harry, Gwen, Mary Jane Watson, Black Cat. You get none of those people. You get absolutely none of those people. You know, we don't even know if Peter has a job. We don't know if, like, he gets paid. We don't really get to know, like, how he has survived. You know, he doesn't really go to college, even though there's a scene of him going to Connors' I said Connors. I wish it was Dr. Connors. Bruce Banner's class. And it's like, you know, because I don't think he was a student there because he can't afford it. And no one even remembers who Peter Parker is, so he doesn't have a degree anymore. So he just kind of, like, lives in, like, some attic, but he doesn't pay rent. So he doesn't really have the Parker luck either in that regard, if that makes sense. So, again, it never tells you. It just never tells you, like, the things that you want to know, or when you really dig into it, things that you, like, kind of want to know more about. So that's unfortunate. But again, that's what I mean. Like you got the heart of Spider-Man, but you don't have all the other organs that make him Spider-Man. So yeah, that's really all I gotta say. I mean, before we get to the rating, I guess I can give my final thoughts, essentially. And then we'll get to the spoiler section, and then we'll wrap up here. Spider-Man Brand New Day is, I can confidently for once in my life, say, after 10 years, after almost a decade of my feelings toward this version of him, can finally say that the first solo Tom Holland Spider-Man movie here is actually good. It's good. It is good. It's actually genuinely good. It's not great. It's not perfect. It's good. It does a lot of things right, but it also does some things wrong. It has the heart, like I was saying earlier. It has the heart, but it lacks other things, like characters, legacy characters. You know, it would have been kind of cool and interesting to see, new friends of his clashing with his old friends, like Ned and Michelle, But you don't see that. Because he never moved on. He's always, you see it in the trailers, he's just kind of on his phone, just watching Ned and Michelle just making videos or whatever they're doing. And he's just being a stalker. And it's just like, I understand they were his friends. They were people that he loved and he cared about. But especially when you watch the movie and you see, like, how his constant, like, obsession with trying to be around them still affects what happens in the story. It just makes you be like, what is this idiot doing? but you understand, but you're like, what is this idiot doing, But again, I wish there were more legacy characters. I mean, some of the leaks were true, some of the leaks were not true. But and again, you cannot compare this thing to the comics when it doesn't use those legacy characters that are important to his character, especially the villains, which again, his actual villains like Tombstone or Scorpion, they're not even the main villains of the movie, which is, I've never seen that in a Spider-Man movie before, ever. So yeah, I mean, for what it is a dramatic improvement. Don't get me wrong. It is a dramatic improvement from Homecoming and Far From Home. And the shift to a new director and the writers, it definitely reflects that. And I sat here. I sat here for like a day or two, and after I saw the movie, and I was so torn. I remember I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to rate this movie, but I was very, very torn. I was not sure what I wanted to give it. I was thinking, like, do I want to give it like a half point? I've never done, a number and a half of any movie I've ever done before for reviewing on this channel. And yeah, I mean, this was very tough. When I give you this number, I want you to know I sat here for hours. This is why this video took so long to do. I sat here for hours trying to make up my mind what I wanted to give this. I was thinking about giving this movie an 8 out of 10. That's a very high number. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought about, a lot of the plot, a lot of the story and characters and the way certain characters were portrayed, I just, again, I was torn. I even wanted to give this like a 7.5 out of 10. But that's not what we do here. So, with that being said, I am giving Spider-Man Brand New Day a 7 out of 10. Again, a good Spider-Man movie. Again, and listen, coming from me, that's a compliment. After again a decade of my feelings toward this version of Spider-Man, the way he's been brought up, the foundation in which he was started and built upon, that's part of the problem as well. So, yeah, I mean, that's really all I got to say about that. So, with that being said, we are going to be moving on to the spoiler section of the movie. So if you have not seen the movie and you want to still see it, get out of here. But if you already saw the movie and or you don't really care about getting spoiled, then stick around, because I'm going to explain, I'm going to go a bit more into detail about certain characters and certain things that happen in the movie, and kind of give you a little bit more explanation about why I gave the rating I gave it and my feelings towards certain things that happen in the movie, stuff like that. Okay, well, let's start with something funny. Let's start with something funny. Black Widow's naked. So I was talking about in the non-spoiler section, I was talking about how, like, Black Widow, she's in this movie a little bit. And Peter, so what happens is Peter goes to, like, this sauna or something, because that's where Black Widow is, and she's naked. She's, like, in this sauna. She's, like, in this, like, hot tub thing, essentially. Do you know how much chlorine they had to put in that bitch, probably to just cover her up? So, it was funny because, like, she's like, it was kind of strange, because she was like, you gotta get naked too, essentially. So he like, it was funny because, like, he goes and he, like, gets, like, these, like, swim trunks on, and he has his mask still on, which I think is cool. It's actually funny. It's cool. But yeah, no, that was the first time seeing her in the movie, and I was like, what the hell? I did not believe it when I heard that rumor, but yeah. But then later, it was kind of funny. I guess that literally is her office, is the joke, and again, she gives Spidey some more information later in the story And that's basically all we see of her. But again, I remember saying that I do like that there are other characters he's going to get information and stuff. He does this a few times with different people and stuff. So that's cool. What else can I say? Okay, let's talk about one of the elephants in the room that I did not talk about in the non-spoiler section. DeWolf. So DeWolf's in this movie. She is race changed, and she's, I think, the mayor of the city. And getting past the whole race change thing, because that's a problem separate by itself. One of the things I thought was very weird about this movie was like I guess he makes his own phones with like broken pieces of phones and stuff, which I guess is kind of cool. Kind of shows that he's smart and stuff, so that they can't track him, I guess, or whatever, the government and stuff. But it's weird because he's got the mayor's number on his phone, and he has frequent communication with this said mayor. And it's kind of cool, but it's also kind of weird, because you got to remember this. The Sokovia Accords, and it was kind of funny because there were a lot of people on the internet talking about this. The Sokovia Accords are still active, and it still shows you that in the movie that is still in effect. So it's like, okay, the mayor is like breaking the law to like let him be Spider-Man and keep doing what he's doing. But it's weird because he just, what is this, the Bat phone from like the Adam West TV show? Like you just got like their cell phone number, you just call them and ring them up if there's trouble. It's just weird. It was just a weird thing. But yeah. All right, what else should I say? So Hulk versus Spider-Man. So, and Punisher actually was involved in this fight too, which was so dumb. It was like, Frank, stop shooting him! You're just pissing him off more! Because Jean Grey at this point has control over the Hulk. But it was cool because Hulk broke out of it because the real Hulk came out. Because, again, you have to remember, Hulk does not like being controlled, okay? He hates that shit. So he broke out of that, and he was, like, ready to smash Spider-Man in half. He was ready to smash him to bits. So, the fight was short. It was actually a lot shorter than I thought it would be. But it did not end the way I thought it would. I think Marvel is really kind of like trying to get away from their jokey all the time thing, because he does not beat the Hulk by like making a joke like I thought they were gonna do, which would have made sense. He beats the Hulk by kind of like appealing to Bruce, which was fine. It works, but it kind of sucked because then he got arrested and then he was just kind of gone. So, I don't think we're going to see Hulk in the next movie either. I think he's just stuck in jail now, which is stupid, especially because of Blonsky and all that shit. So, that's what I mean. It's just kind of one of those things where it's like, we don't know what happens to this said character after the movie ends. So, again, it's just another fucking plot hole. And this movie has a lot of those things. This movie has a lot of weird plot holes and things that they do not explain to you. They just kind of like, it kind of happens, and then you're just kind of expected to just accept it and not ask. Like, just don't ask questions. Just accept it. Just consume product and don't ask questions. That's what it kind of feels like a little bit. But the good news is MJ or Michelle Jones does not love Peter anymore. So yeah, they have this moment where on Frank's ship, his boat or whatever, and she finds the letter he wrote that he was gonna give them, I think, or tell them, and she's like, I don't remember you, I don't know who you are, blah 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 blah, and the movie ends with them kind of like separate. They're not. It seems like they're not getting back together. So, yeah, I guess that's a good thing. So we can finally move on. I don't know, maybe get with Jean or something. There's a redhead. So there's a scene where I think like Jean's mind controlling Michelle, and she like kissed Peter when she body snatched Michelle. So I just thought it was funny because I remember I was just like, so Zendaya can kiss another guy in the movie, but Tom can't kiss another girl in the movie. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I think it's, again, another reason why I don't really like her, because it's like, I'm just saying, you know. But yeah, no, I thought that was funny. I feel like we've gone full circle with the kiss joke. So yeah, let's move on. All right, so I want to talk a little bit more in depth about his mutation. So I remember when I first saw the trailer, I thought that they were going to do Man-Spider. I thought that that's what they were going to do. But that's not what they do at all. They decide to do this weird mixture of, how do I describe this? I would describe it as like Man-Spider combined with the black suit, because he's very moody. There are moments in the film where he gets mad and moody, and he's not like in control fully, I guess you could say, but he's aware. The thing is, he's aware. So, and then the movie kind of does this thing where it's like, oh, like, you know, the spider genes are, you know, they're you know, hitting their growth spurt. They're finally, you know, hitting puberty, if you will. And it's like, I don't even think spiders do hit puberty. Like, I know they molt. That's how they get bigger, which that scene is there. But again, it's like, again, it was very weird. It was very strange. So, again, he starts getting aggressive almost for no reason. And then he has the organic webs, which, again, you don't know by the end of the movie if he stops using the organic webs or if he keeps using the organic webs. You don't know if, like, because part of the plot of this movie was him trying to cure this mutation. That was the point of the movie, or part of the movie. And he does not. He embraces the mutation, but nothing happens to him. So, again, I don't think we're ever going to get Man-Spider with this version of him, which is kind of disappointing. But at the same time, it's like, I get it, you know, you don't want to freak out the kids, but again, you have Punisher in there, so whatever. And that's another thing. It's like, I feel like if they did do the Man-Spider thing, I feel like it would have gave Punisher a little bit more reason to be there and to actually maybe be a little bit of a hero. Because he's just kind of there to kind of annoy or be in Spider-Man's way, if that makes sense. And again, the whole thing with, like, this mutation thing, he has, again, all these mood swings and stuff. It does not really come full circle at the end of the movie. So he's fighting the hand members. So the scene where he fights the hand members, he accepts his mutation and then he fights them all with the organic webs and more heightened senses and stuff. And I kind of understand what they were trying to do with it, but it also does not make sense. Because you don't know if he keeps using the organic webs and all those heightened powers, or if he does eventually, you know, stop doing that. You don't know. So again, it's just an unanswered question. And another thing, there's that scene where Jean was controlling Michelle, he literally grabbed Zendaya by the neck. And it's like, what is wrong with you? Like I can imagine, like, Black Suit Spider-Man doing that, but it's like, for you to be just, why? Because you're hitting puberty and you're having mood swings, so you're gonna... He does this twice, might I add. meaning like where he gets aggressive with Scorpion and he gets aggressive with Zendaya. But again, it's like with Scorpion, it's like, you know that they're just being mind controlled. Why are you physically attacking the other person's body? That's not gonna do anything to Jean. It's just, it was dumb. It was really weird and dumb and stupid. And it's like, it felt like they were just trying to create drama and to create tension, where it doesn't work, because it's like, why would he do that? That just doesn't really make sense. And like, for example, like when he, again, going back to the Hand, when he's fighting the Hand at the end in the prison scene, he does not let this Hand guy, when he webs him up to a wall, like, go into a spike. He saves him from the spike. But the whole point of the movie was he was trying to control the mutation so that he would be less aggressive. That was the whole point. So again, that part of the movie is probably the weirdest and stupidest part of the movie, I feel like. I feel like you could have taken that part out of the movie and it probably would have been a little bit better for it. But it feels like they had to give you, like, it feels like they wanted to do certain stories, but they didn't know how to do them, so they decided to take two different stories and kind of make it into its own thing. And that's what you're getting here. And it just doesn't really work that well. It does, like it just kind of falls apart at the end. It just kind of falls flat. I feel like the mutation thing, it just falls flat. It doesn't really go anywhere because it doesn't get concluded by the end of the movie. Again, like, it was just weird. So I was talking about Jean Grey. So Jean Grey. So we're almost done. Don't worry. I know. 15 minutes later. So Jean Grey is not the bad guy in this movie. She is trying to get revenge for her sister, who sometimes is in the comics. I know. I had to fact check all this shit. She does, I think sometimes she has a sister, sometimes she doesn't. Depends on lore and canon and which versions and stuff. But her sister is also a telepath. I guess it's like her older sister. And the government, yes, the government, took her, Damage Control took her, which Spider-Man was working with at the beginning of the movie, and basically killed her, trying to turn her basically into a weapon. You know, so you're getting a little bit of like, you know, like Blonsky levels. You know, you're getting General Ross levels of like taking like a mutant or, you know, a superpowered being like Hulk, and you're trying to turn them into a weapon. And that's basically the plot of the movie, is the government trying to take Jean Grey and her other sister and turn them into weapons. So Spider-Man goes from stopping Jean to now he's saving Jean by the end of the movie. You know, and then that scene where Jean freezes like everyone. That scene, you know what's funny? That scene reminded me a lot of X-Men 3. Weirdly enough, it reminded me of X-Men 3, and it was actually kind of cool to see that again. I was actually kind of surprised to see that part of the story, you know, that character do that again. Again, very Professor Xavier, like X-Men 2 vibes with that stuff. So it finally did make sense when I finally realized that, yes, this character is Jean. So then now when I look back on it, I'm just like, yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm an idiot. I was just in denial. I just was so in denial that it was Jean as the villain here. Kind of, sort of, not really. So one of the cool things, this is probably one of the last couple things I'll say. There's a couple things I'll say before I'll wrap this spoiler section up. So one of the cool things was at the end of the movie where Spider-Man finally gets past the Hand and he finally gets to Jean. So Jean's ready to kill this guy, right? She's about to kill this guy for killing her sister, essentially. And Spidey's trying to talk her down, and then she kind of freezes him, and then so it was kind of cool because Peter's like, okay, fine, finally enter my mind. He lets her enter his mind because she cannot get in his head the whole movie, which is true because Spider-Man does have a level of he does have a level of mental protection from telepaths, a little bit, and it was really good. So the scene basically is like it's a memory of Peter and Aunt May talking, and it was really nice. It was a really nice scene because it really worked with Jean's story and her being put in that position. And it was really cool. That scene was really well done. So that's why I'm saying, like, this movie, that scene right there is really, like, again, the heart of Spider-Man. You're seeing the heart of Spider-Man, you know, there. And finally, Aunt May was actually acting like Aunt May, you know, besides, you know, No Way Home and stuff. But that was a really good scene. I really did like that scene. But then the Punisher shoots, because Punisher was... So this is one of those moments where I felt like Frank was being a bit out of character, because I don't know if Jean is an adult or not, but he's just like, yeah, no, I'll just shoot her. So he tries to shoot Jean with a sniper rifle, because, again, he's trying to save the day his own way. Tries to shoot Jean, but then Spider-Man... his spider sense goes off while they're in his head, and he saves her, but he gets shot. And he doesn't get shot like in the arm or the leg. No, he gets shot in the chest. And I remember when the people were doing screen tests of the movie, there were a lot of people who watched the screen test that were not happy, because he actually died by the end of this movie, in the original version they did of the movie, and they ended up changing it because people didn't like it, and I just thought that was funny, a little fun fact for you. But no, we get that scene of Punisher holding Spidey's body, kind of like for when he was in the Civil War comic, which was kind of cool. And then we get this weird, out of character moment with Frank where, he kind of helps Spidey sneak out of the hospital, but he's, wearing Spider-Man's mask, and he's just like, yeah, I'm alive. And it's I don't know if Frank would do that, at least not to the degree that he was doing it, you know, but, whatever, it's weird. So the last I got two more things, and then we'll wrap up the video. So... the scene with Ned, so at the very end of the movie, this is the last real scene of the movie, is where Spidey goes back to this cafe or whatever to meet Ned. And they do the handshake thing that they've been doing in those older movies. And then Ned just kind of remembers that it's Peter. He just starts remembering the past. And it's And I remember I was talking to my brother about it, and he was just like, yo, you know, he's magical. He did the circle things. And it's I was like, okay, I guess a handshake is magical then. A weird, stupid friend handshake thing is a magic spell to just make him remember that he's Peter and Parker and all that shit. And it's just okay, whatever, man. So they're probably going to stay friends throughout the, you know, future movies, I guess. So the final thing that we'll talk about is, I think the next time we see Spider-Man, he's going to be in Battleworld, because so there's this spider tracer thing that Ned the Stalker made, and it showed his location, shows Peter's location, and the end credit scene is his little tracker going off to to off Earth. So I think we're going to Battleworld next. So maybe that's when we'll get the black suit. Maybe that's when we'll start doing that. All those storylines and stuff. We'll see. I don't know. Probably not, if I had to take a wild guess. Maybe he's in Doomsday. I don't know. But, yeah. That's all I really got to say. This was a long video. I had a lot to say, but again, I'm glad I finally got to do this for you guys. You know, like I said, you know, when I gave my rating, it was very tough for me because there were a lot of good moments, but there were a lot of things in this movie that were just really weird and confusing and stupid. But again, overall, I think this was a solid movie, but it's not perfect. You know, I think there are going to be a lot of people going through the honeymoon phase right now, and that's fine. That's how it always is with, you know, normies when they go see a new movie and stuff. But yeah, no, that's all I really got to say. So let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments below. And until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'm out of here. Up, and away. See you guys.